All right, what's going on, everyone? This is MC Till live on the Boom Bap Chat. So glad that you could be here tonight. If you're watching the live feed, you know we have a very special guest. We always have special guests, but tonight's extra special, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. Uh, Before we get into that, I do want to shout out everybody's records here in Cincinnati. If you don't know about this store, then you've not been listening to our podcast because we talk about it every time we're on here. Everybody's records has a great selection of vinyl, tapes, CDs, books, all kinds of great stuff. So if you're in Cincinnati, go over to the store, check them out, buy some merch, holler at me. I'll come meet you there. We'll have a good time. If you can't be here, you can check them out online at everybody'srecords.com. So check that out, please. All right. For our formal introduction of our guest tonight, I just read this. She wrote her first play at the age of 7 years old. It's pretty amazing. She's a writer, a singer, an MC, a beat maker. She can do it all. She can even freestyle about a misplaced shoe in front of an audience and KRS-One. She's dope. She's prolific with words. She has a beautiful reputation that precedes her. So we're going to get to know her right now. Please join me as we welcome to the Boom Bap Chat, the one and only Prowess the Testament. Woo! What's up? What's up? How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much. What an intro.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, we've heard so many good things. Obviously, I've heard the music, and so exciting to have you here to get to know you a little better and chat. So, thank you for spending some time tonight.
Yes, thank you so much for the invitation. And yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I heard that story. I heard you share that story. First, my man Joe November. So, shout out Joe November. He said,
Yes.
ask her about KRS-One and how she got her name. And then I heard the story from another podcast. So for
Yeah.
those that have not heard the story, would you mind sharing, how you got this name, Prowess, the Testament?
Yes. So I was a part of a bunch of folks that were, I guess, they were doing a Temple of Hip Hop tour at the time. KRS-One was sort of curating openers for that tour, and courtesy of my friends and my acquaintances and music folks here in the scene in the community, they invited me. DJ Soyo, Earth One, Enoch Seventh Prophet, all people that kind of worked with Temple of Hip Hop, and they had like a opening opportunity. So we all had to sort of audition for it. But it had been a long day. We had been waiting probably, I don't know, I got to this event at around 1 o'clock, and around like 7 o'clock is when we started like lining up to get on stage. And I had shoes that were like a half size too big. And I got on stage to perform, to audition. I was all the way in the back, but courtesy of my friend Flex Matthews was like number 3 in line or 2 in line, and he let me get in front of him. And so I appreciated that, but he let me get in front of him. And so I was like second on stage to go. And my shoe came off while I was, in the middle of the verse, while everybody's just sort of looking because they aren't sure in the audience, right? They came there to see KRS-One, but it also was Big Daddy Kane and Speech from Arrested Development that were also performing. It was like a big performance that night. And so they had no idea what was going on. But they were looking at us, like, what is happening? Who are these folks? Like, what is going on? And so anyway, my shoe came off in the middle of the performance. And I mean, I guess in classic, MC style, you then make self references to whatever that is. It's funny at the time. And people started cheering and laughing. Like it was so great because at first people were just like, what y'all about to get up here and do, and then the energy changed in the place. And when I came off stage and I came backstage, KRS was standing there, and I remember the teacher saying, like, prowess, that's prowess. And I took that to mean like I'm ordaining myself now with that name, because I had a name that
Mm,
kind of was didn't have a lot of meaning. It was an acronym. It was like it came from my message board days, back in the old days of for people who were on like undergroundhiphop.com. I used to be on there as a name. And so that name stuck with me, but it wasn't like something I was wed to. And I think in 2005 or six, maybe, I forget what year, I changed my name to Prowess. And then I added the Testament because people used to call me like preacher, pastor. They used to call me Malcolm X. They were so disrespectful. And I was originally going to call
Mm.
myself the Tabernacle, but it didn't work. And so I just chose the Testament to represent like what it is I do.
Yeah, that's dope. And so good with words. The testament, just has that
Yeah.
connotation, that
Yeah.
there's power in the word in the word.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's super dope. You mentioned something clicked. It made me think about a moment I had when I used to perform a lot, and one of the things I learned on stage was like, if you're an entertainer, if you're an MC, everything that happens on stage is just an opportunity to entertain or engage the crowd. And
Yes.
it's like that shoes, like, yeah, some might be like, oh man, this is terrible. It ruined the show. Like,
Right.
but an MC is like takes advantage. And I'm thinking like even Big Daddy Kane, he had that moment where he dropped the mic. I don't know if you saw that video, but he
Yes.
dropped
Yeah.
the mic, picked it up,
Yeah.
started rhyming.
Yeah.
Um, but as you perform, have you noticed any other examples of like just being in front of people, being an MC, it's about making connections
Yeah.
and not necessarily the show going perfect.
It is. I think, you know what helped me with that is like freestyling, because I feel like
Mm.
the aspect of why people don't want to do it is because every word is imperfect. And when me and my friends would get together, and part of what we would do, right, is kind of like almost, it would surface jokes for years. Like I still make fun of my best friend, him freestyling. We were in the car and he got stumped and he was like, and I like those lights. And I still be like, when I rap and he see me in the audience, I still be like, and I like those lights, but like, just it's so fun to just and this is like from 15, 20 years ago, something like that. We were super kids, like 14, 15. And the idea that that can carry up this long, later is so funny to me. But those hijinks, I think, are just kind of like they're a fodder for witty commentary. I'll sometimes freestyle. I'll be talking about a sitcom or something or a show, and I'll be like, I forget the show name, but it's the character that came with, you know what I'm saying? Like, oh,
Yeah,
and then people be like, oh, that's not that. That's not good talk.
right.
That's. So I think it allowed me to kind of not take it so seriously. Like you said, it's about the connection and it's about how you make people feel. And not everything is supposed to be perfect. And I find that like one of my favorite things I love is like when there's mistakes in a word that somebody says or something like that, and it's memorable and you remember it. And I don't know, it's just like it sticks with you for years. Um, and I think those types of things are fun and just kind of like you don't take yourself so seriously. Because I
Yeah.
have like super stage fright. And I think one of the things that makes me have stage fright is me believing that things are going to mess up, things are going to
Mm.
fail. I don't know, there's going to be a mistake, I'm going to forget this lyric. Like undoubtedly I might, but that's what like I always think to myself, but that's what freestyle is for. Like they don't know the song and they definitely don't know it as well as I know it, right?
Right.
So it's like that kind of stuff makes me inspired.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super dope. Are there other artists that you've come across, like live performers, where you're like, whoa, that they are dope? What an
Ooh,
inspiration to me.
so many. One of my favorite performers is Master Ace. I love the way
Oh.
he performed. I mean, just an incredible performer. Um, you know what? Years ago, I saw one of the best shows I have ever seen with like 5 or 7 people in the audience. It was disturbing. It was Latyrix, with
Oh.
Chief the Truth Speaker and Lyrics Born.
Yeah.
And it was such a small audience. It was raining and it was like capped off like a really rainy week. It was like one of those kinds of weeks when just people are just not coming out. And it
Yeah.
probably would have got canceled. It was about 5 people, and then it grew to about maybe 60 before the venue that we were in at Howard Theater. That was super tiny. But everybody got close to the stage. That was one of the best performances I'd ever seen. They were doing like push-ups on stage, jumping jacks. They were just having so much fun. And it was like they brought us into the experience and they were like getting to know us by name, you know what I mean? Like in the audience. So they're like, oh, by the way, the naming us. And it was just so dope to see that because I was like, I've been listening to just Soul Sides for a long time, that
Mm.
whole collective, and to see them, that was my first time seeing them live. And I was like, and it didn't disappoint. A De La is probably my favorite performers of
Mm.
all time. Like I just but has a lot to do with that's my intro to hip hop. Seeing them at like
Oh,
5, I saw them in kindergarten.
what?
They came to my elementary school with Prince Paul when he was with Setsasonic.
What?
And yeah, that was in like I think that's the first time I'd ever been like I didn't know what it was. It just seemed like this electric thing.
Yeah.
But seeing them and the way they perform and they're doing their dance and their that miming kind of thing that they do, and then they're rapping and then the formations, and it was just like I don't know what this is, but I want it. I
Yes.
need it. And it just changed my life. I feel like seeing that. So that was, and when, every time I see them, I undoubtedly, it's crying. I'm just in tears all the time.
Hmm.
It's just, I don't know why. I love seeing like Redman perform. He's another person I love to see perform. Um, because I feel like he's an even better performer than he is like just on wax, like which is amazing anyway, right? But like he solidifies his space for people that don't know how the roots. I mean, it's so many people that, and I'm talking about old school roots when they used to do hip hop 101, and it was like
Mm.
Rozelle doing the sounds, and it was like them freestyling on, great songs that comes up, and it's like, oh, this is, Helter Skelter, we got to do this song. It's just them being able to take songs that have made us, songs that everybody in the audience just paused to be like, how are they about to flip this, Ice Cube song? And I just loved seeing that, like the fact that they, as a band, like with freestyle, freeform things, as they were coming, and I'm like, it just was amazing emceeing, and just the whole entire again formations and the style and just the Clang Squad with Kamal. It was like the whole thing. I love the Roots. So yeah.
That's dope. So going back to De La Soul when you were
Yes.
5, do you
Yeah.
remember the songs they were doing at that
Oh,
time?
absolutely. I mean, it was all 3 feet high and rising song.
Yo,
Um,
so that was at that era.
yes, it was. Yeah. They
That's
were,
so
I
dope they
don't even
came.
think that album had just dropped. It was like it hadn't hit it dropped in 89, but like 91, 92, it was still on the charts. It was still growing, and it was still on like this was back in the time when people would have 2 albums out. Remember, like De La would have 2 albums out, but they'd still have like 2 songs from both albums on the charts. That's
Mm,
how like De La Soul is Dead was out and 3 Feet High and Rising was out, but the tour happened, after, it was supposed to be encompassing, I guess, both
yeah.
albums, but it was right after De La Soul is Dead is out. But a lot of the songs that were new. Nobody really knew those. And I mean, we were like elementary school, so they could have performed those songs. But I think, it was just interesting to see that when
Yeah.
people had a song, it's like they performed like Roller Skating Jam named Saturdays, and then they also performed a bunch of songs from, 3 Feet High. So it was just kind of like, that's amazing. Yeah, we can never. I feel like it's a sad day now to really think about it, but because of all the loss and
Yeah.
Dave, and it's been a lot. But I feel like it's even more brought me, I think, into perspective with it. And I saw them at a show. I don't know, probably it's been about 6 years ago now, but I saw them and I asked Maceo if he remembered coming to the elementary school. And he said, we came every year. So I do remember. He was like, we didn't just come to that school. We came to DC every year.
Mm.
And Prince Paul's dad lived in DC.
Oh,
And so it's like things I learned, right? It was
yeah.
like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, so he was here a lot, and sort of talking about, their experience coming down here a lot and like participating in schools. And I was backstage, and they were doing much more. And Miss
Mm.
Yancey, Dilla's mom, was standing beside me, Ma Dukes. And
Yeah.
I mean, just the idea, right? She got up on stage for that song, and it was just like, I don't know, everybody in there couldn't have been a dry eye in the
Mm.
house. And that was before, Dave passed. But I was like, I don't even think I could be in an audience now and see them do that. I probably would just crash. I couldn't
Yeah.
do it. But yeah, that was a moment.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that. I did. They are my favorite group of all time, and
Yes.
also very influential when I heard 3 Feet High and Rising, the album.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were they your first introduction to hip hop music?
They were, because it was my first time. I grew up in a musical household, so but the music, DC has a very indigenous music culture,
Sure.
go-go music, and my uncle played for a go-go band,
Mm,
and so he played for Chuck Brown, who at that time was like the biggest artist in DC across genres, and so it was. I feel like because of that, right? Like I was always exposed to music, and I was always exposed to music throughout because my other uncle paid for like the Gap band and wrote
mm,
for them and wrote songs. It was like their music was just a pervasive thing in our house. Everybody played an instrument. My dad plays bass. And it's just like everybody I know played an instrument. And in DC, that's very common.
yeah.
If you don't get it at school, like you just learn through the neighborhood. You just teach yourself. People taught themselves how to play bass, or they taught themselves how to play piano or keyboard. And so that kind of happened. But I think until I saw De La, that was the first time that I saw like what formational like hip hop, the foundational rather hip hop looked like. Because I was like, I'd heard that like I'd heard raps, I'd heard stuff on the radio, but and mostly tribe. I heard a lot of like native tongue stuff on the radio
Mm,
because
mm-hmm.
DC was very, I feel like, very into native tongues. Like that was the I feel like they connected more to that music, but hip hop was not very pervasive in DC, right? It was just kind of
Mm,
like it was almost the thing that you said you listened to, but you did it in a quiet way because people would fight you, they would jump you. It was like you could not come right out and say you listened to hip hop, and all of it didn't matter what it was, unless it was Scarface, right? And then it was like Scarface and Pac were the only
mm,
acceptable artists that you could listen to. And so a lot of the DC sort of community and DC hip hop scene in that era started to sort of gravitate towards trying to sound like that. But
mm.
we out of that came like our underground, what I would call our underground indie hip hop scene.
Yeah.
And so growing up, getting a chance to see those people perform and hear their names and that kind of thing in the community, I think like there's a DC Scorpio being one of them. Like he was a rapper who rapped with a lot of go-go bands, and there was Stinky Dink and a bunch of other people that were like rappers that did things, but it wasn't like I don't know. That was the first time I'd seen people who were on TV who were in front of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are some DC MCs, producers, through the years or just now that you really get into?
Oh, I mean, I think I would say pretty much everyone. Like this is funny, but everybody because it's such a small community here.
Mm,
And I think people know Chucky Thompson, and
mhm.
that being like one of the most, I think, sort of uh biggest names I think that people know about the because he was a member of Bad Boys Hitman Squad.
Right.
And he did, My Life by Mary and Production of Ready to Die and all of
Yeah.
that. And so people mostly know him. And I always say, like, he inspired so many of us that we didn't even sometimes even know because he was behind our favorite songs. And those songs got a lot of play on the radio. But now it makes sense, right? I didn't know growing up that that was the case. But I mean, everybody from Odyssey, I mean,
Mm,
is Ray Kev Brown. I mean,
mm.
there's, Roddy Rod that's from here.
Yep.
There is, I mean, Sean Bourne and Camber and the whole, what was low budget and is low budget and this kind of has changed. But Ken Starr, there's so many dope people here. Priest the Nomad, Storm the Unpredictable. Um, we had crews, so it was like you had Kokai and you had, Opus Akavin and you had that squad and that team. Black Indian was one of the biggest inspirations for
Mm,
me because I could not get into a few of the open mics here because a lot of them will let folks in with no ID at all.
oh
But they
wow.
just, I was just below the age where I could fake an ID. I will say that because I could have probably, but especially being a girl, like being a woman, people don't tend to think that there is some, disadvantage, but it's in some ways there was because it's very much more dangerous to be like, I'm not going to let an underage woman in, but I might have let
Mm,
an underage guy in. So
Right.
there was a lot of that happening, but I couldn't get in. So I would sit outside the open mics and kind of like freestyle, hang out with friends. We would just walk up and down U Street, which was like our Black Broadway, where everything
Mm,
happened. And it was kind of like that was the scene. The music scene was so heavy there. Whether you were an instrumentalist or musician, or you rapped, or there's Freestyle Union, which came out of
mm,
Storm. Well, not out of Storm, but out of State of the Union at that time was a large club here.
mm.
And so a lot of the architects in our community started in that open mic. And it was started by Tony Blackman, and her being a woman, right? Like that was something I think that
Yeah.
inspired me a lot.
Dope.
But yeah, nonchalant. I mean, she's from here. It's like, so we had folks who I feel like when I would see them, they were people that inspired me and made me really like think I could do it. But I'd hang out and Black Indian would sort of tap me and be like, you got it. Like one day you're gonna be, just wait till I tell. He would tell me
Mm.
and I would be like, oh no, just kind of like he just pulling my leg. And what I loved is that unfortunately he passed
Mm.
last year. But in the spite of him passing, I think we all learned that that was something that he really truly did for all of us. Like
Mm.
it was the activating your, that part of you that says you can do this. And he
Yeah.
told all of us that. And like to take this music, head rock, that's somebody, just people that drop little gems, because you never know what you're going to get. Enoch, Seventh Prophet, I mentioned, and Earth One, Damu, the Fudge Monk. I mean,
Oh
all of
yeah.
these people ran the open mic that I started in.
Dope.
So just seeing them and them being able to teach, they're like peer teachers, right? Because it's like they were hosting and doing their thing, but at the same time, them just doing their thing is educating us on what to do.
Yeah. Dope. You mentioned the Fudge Monk. Oh, he's so
Yeah.
good. Did you hear the jazz album he did? Like
Yes. With Raw
the
Poetic.
yeah, with Raw Poetic and
Yeah.
I think it was Raw Poetic's uncle, Archie. Was
Yes.
it Archie Shep?
Yes.
I think.
Exactly.
Man, that
Yeah.
is because so much of like jazz and hip hop is like it's hip hop music
Interwed.
and it has jazz, jazzy samples in it. But
Yes.
that
And
album, which I love, but that album was like a jazz album that had like hip
exactly.
hop elements mixed in. That was a
It
dope
is a
album.
jazz album. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the interesting thing is like it is a jazz album. And when
Yeah.
you say that, it's like we are mindful of the fact that sometimes these genres really do cross over into each other and they are
Yeah.
it's like hip hop is just an exploration, and it's based on so many things of avant-garde.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
so glad that yeah, Damu's incredible. I just he was someone I really respected and looked up to. Him, the gentleman I mentioned who put me in front of him during that KRS show,
Mm.
Flex Matthews is a
Yeah.
collaborator, longtime collaborator of Damu. And so, yeah, just growing up and seeing like that, it was just like you couldn't afford to not do your due diligence. But there's also like, I feel like a scholarship and kind of academic piece of it,
Yeah.
studying that like just that's something that my friends we would just kind of be quizzical about everything. Like my friends got to know they would study snares like like it was compounds and protein. So they're breaking down. That's Pete Rock snare right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I know that's
Yeah.
that, and it's like so the symphonics of stuff and just like understanding they were gear nerds too. So it was like me being growing up alongside them gave me like atmospheric stuff to talk about or to be into, like muted harmonics and that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Like I didn't really understand all the time what I was listening to, but then them kind of giving me this canvas of like, nah, see what he did right there is,
Mm.
he took and he sidechained it, but then he put a filter on, it's like all these little things, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't know, when like we were discovering like what swing on the drums was, I was like
Mm.
happy to like hop in. I was showing my friend how to put swing on his drums, and I'm like, hold on, now you gotta count the 16th note, and we're doing it together on like his on his beat machine, and they're just like funny to think about. That was something that we grew up and did together. But we taught, you teach each other and you're learning at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. I want to talk a little bit about hip hop, boom bap, and the academic world. But
Yes.
before I jump into that, Joe November did want me to ask you about if you could share a little bit about your experience at the Words Beat and Life Winter concert series. You know about this in
Oh, yes.
2020?
Yes.
Ring a bell?
So words beats in life is which is so important. We'll talk about that in this academic aspect in a minute. But Words Beats in Life is a nonprofit that's very close to my heart.
Mm,
It is a DC based nonprofit, but essentially what their goal is to do is really trying to empower the next generation through arts educational programming. So it's a
oh,
nonprofit
dope.
here that helps sort of this creative ecosystem across whether it's fine art, mixed media art, but they teach DJing, they teach emceeing, they teach production, they teach
Mm,
all these different things, cultural diplomacy. So they go overseas and offer like musical and dance classes and do public art creation. They offer scholarships to kids, but it's really important. But they have a several number of festivals that they do.
yeah,
And I participated in their one of their winter festivals, and I got a chance to perform for that. And I think that's what Joe November is talking about. But yeah, I
yeah.
performed for that, and it was like at the time it was during the middle of COVID, right? It was kind of like them
Mm,
trying to activate this festival that they typically do in a much larger format and condense it into online. And so it was like very important to think about how do we sort of create this experience that feels intimate and this experience that feels connected, but at the same time we're on live streaming. And so for me it was important to just kind of showcase at that point like what I do, and but make it as intimate, bring people into my experience as much as possible. And so I like curated this
mm,
Casablanca performance. I was like, you know what, I'm going to start with like the gloves, and I'm going to have on like a fascinator, and I'm going to like completely take people into like this space of like, imagine being in there like it's a film noir, but then you
dope.
against like this more harder edge kind of boom bap style. Which
Yeah.
my friend, he runs a podcast here, he calls my style, which I love, like iron fist and a velvet glove, and I love that. I was like,
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome. That sounds like a really, really cool concert series and just a good
yeah,
initiative. Yeah, that's great. Um, so can you speak a little bit about like your experience at the intersection of like hip hop and the academic world?
yeah. So I think how do I say this in the best way? I feel like there's such a convergence of those two ideas right now. Academia has really started to think about discourse around the cultural significance of hip hop.
Mm,
I've joined a number of like panels and come to a number of events and programming that universities have had to talk about everything from cultural identity to socio-political commentary to hip hop in education and hip hop in the hip hop financial model, um, around gender studies,
mm,
entrepreneurship. So it's interesting, I think, how we have really investigated hip hop as like a platform for these conversations. I think one of the things that I was in a panel last year for the 50th anniversary of hip hop at Howard University. They did this whole Howard Hip Hop 50 celebration. And one of the things that we were kind of talking about was like, it ain't real hip hop to be in here talking about,
mm.
like investigating, this kind of these issues and calling them these words, right? It's sort of like it's kind of antithetical to what we consider as very computational and thinking about. It's great that it's interdisciplinary and that we're using sort of this methodologies and frameworks and putting it with a lens on hip hop. But I thought about the fact of like that's real challenging of the norms, that is like that ain't hip hop to be sitting in a panel buttoned up talking about what it is, what a freestyle is. It's like, no, you got to do it. It
Yeah.
needs to be experiential. It needs to be, sort of hands-on applied learning. Um, you can't tell somebody what it's like, and it's just kind of like, and I think although I'm a fan still of the fact that there is scholarship and sort of dynamics around curricula and pedagogy that are around hip hop and education, I just think that there needs to be at some point a next sort of a next step. Is that we were even talking about hip hop and technology with obviously with AI and how AI has both helped and to also damage, I guess, damage the community in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a blessing and a curse. I remember someone talking about the idea of the death of hip hop. I think it was around Nas when he released Hip Hop is Dead. I remember someone, I forget who it was, but they made this comment about, yeah, people have been talking about that since, Sugar Hill Records came
Yeah.
out. Like once it was recorded and, once there was money, a lot of money involved and
Yeah.
corporations involved. Like, yeah, that was the death of hip hop. And so it's like a blessing and a curse because if that didn't happen, so many people would have missed out on so many great relationships and great art and great, experiences. But then on the other side of that sword is like, yeah, it's not really supposed to be in corporate hands.
Exactly. And I think
So
that's the hard part, right? It's like I'm a huge like I don't know, I just staunchly against the idea of this annotation of lyrics, right? Like I just feel like it's someone telling us what they want us to have, this analysis and sentiment analysis, and it's them studying linguistic patterns and studying the artist and then saying they wanted us to think this, but I love some of the conversations I've heard like Nori talk about it. And it's like, nah, I meant to say hospiti. And I wasn't trying to say it
yes,
wasn't supposed to be some cultural,
yeah,
phenomenon or something. I just said it because that's what I called it. You know what I'm saying? It's like
right,
because it rhymed. And like, and I love that
yes,
kind of it forces people to be like, sometimes it's just not that deep, Sometimes
yeah,
people are having fun and sometimes it's a simplification and not this like complexity that's added to
yep.
everything. Yeah.
One of my favorite things I discovered was when people were um dissecting Ghostface Killer's lyrics and just
Yeah.
like jumping in. No, this is what he means, blah blah blah. Blah.
Yeah.
And then Ghostface comes out and is like, yo, some of those lyrics didn't mean anything. I just said
Yeah.
them.
Exactly. That's what, yeah. I was talking to, we were on the panel, there was a couple there was talking about that they do sort of AI generated, they have AI generated sort of this og driven virtual reality technology that allows hip hop artists to interact with it, and it is basically you battle the AI, right? And I joke saying,
Interesting.
if you think that your AI can beat me, are you like you got to be kidding me? Like you can't, because it's driven by a replication of something that's not real. And the
Right.
ideas are it's trying to learn. It's machine learning that is really iterative. So there's no one to tell. I don't have an iterative. Whatever I say is whatever I feel at that moment, and I'm
Right.
going to capture I can capture this machine that you have can't capture something that happened like 5 minutes ago on the train. It can't happen, can't capture the game from last night when, you know what I'm saying, when
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler got it. You can't capture that moment, but I can put that in my freestyle. You know what I'm saying? So it's like you think that this is, and I was just telling, I was like, it's so wild to me that we're trying to capture like nuance and then potential misinterpretation of nuance
Mm.
in these sort of AI generated
Yeah.
tools. And, which without sounding like the person that's like, get off my lawn. I don't
Yeah.
want AI avatars in my hip hop.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, it's why it's these AI. Yeah, like the whole Kendrick diss apparently was an AI.
Yeah.
Like that's wild. That is so
Yeah.
wild. So what would you say to people like, the cat's out of the bag. Like I'm not sure there's any going back, but what would you say to someone that's like, yo, I'm not really with so much that is, so prevalent in hip hop music, rap music. Want to go back to a time where it's more pure, more innocent, more about community. What would you say to someone that's like frustrated that like kind of came from that ilk and wants to go back and is frustrated? What would you say, to that person?
I would say that, first of all, I feel like all things all things go back to where they were supposed to go, right? Like there is a history repeats itself more
Yeah.
than we can think of. And so I would say give it a minute and wait. There that the traditions will always sort of restart and re-engage themselves. But
Mm.
I think it's important to be able to, as you are going through the evolution, to always continue to sort of celebrate the contributions of our past, because that is something that I find that people don't take the time to do anymore, right? Like I talk about De La Soul, but really that's not my age group. That's probably like my uncle Danny's age group, that he's in his 50s. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I did like it was pervasive. So I knew about it. They came to my school. I was in first grade, but it was
Yeah.
something that we could connect on. And I think like new methods and new ways have to be explored alongside sort of expanding your horizons about what came before it. Where did it come
Yeah.
from? And so that's really important to me. That's something that I spend time doing. I like wanted to sort of do a podcast on it. I had actually talked to Damu about being my co-host for this at one point
Oh,
in time.
dope.
Yeah, I was around like the idea that I feel like sampling has been a conversation. I have a father who's a musician. I know a lot of musicians who are like, I don't do that sampling. Y'all need to learn how to play instruments. You know what I'm saying? What's this hip hop? You know,
Right,
but at
right.
the same time, I've explained it to my father to say, but it's also opening up new opportunities to celebrate artists that people don't know. I'm like, I didn't know Ronnie Laws until I heard Try. I didn't
Right.
know, like I had heard those things before. I talk about a lot knowing sort of this Don Blackman sample that Elder Head Touch to use. But I knew that sample
Mm.
because my dad played that song all the time because he loved bass players and he played, you know, a bunch of bass players depending on who it was. I knew a lot Stanley Clarke samples. I knew a lot of, you know, James Jamerson stuff. I knew Willie Weeks stuff. I knew every bass player stuff. So when it
Mm.
was sampled, I'd be like, oh, that's people would be like, how you know that? But I'm like, because my dad plays the original. But
Right.
that's it's I feel like it was disrespectful that you don't know that, right? It's almost like you're not doing your homework to
Yeah.
explore the roots of this thing. So yes, things evolve and they have to grow because we have to have push for continued innovation. In order for the culture to survive, it has to be challenged with, you know, relevance, and it's an ever-changing landscape that we have. But when we see that, like, you can look back at historic moments and go, you know what, there was a eclipse in this year and there was one in this year and the sentiment was likely the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like history is always going to repeat itself, and we are in a space of being able to, you have to learn how to adapt by, you know, building that sort of diverse and inclusive methods. And I think as we adapt, we really need to be thinking about how are we adding balance, right? It's like all these, I love that it's all these women in hip hop, much more in the front facing side than there used to be, whereas a lot of women in sort of back end, no Diddy, but in the back end of hip hop. And now, right, in the front facing, sort of more consumer facing side, there's all these women, but there's
Yeah.
very little balance to choose from. You know, so
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the artists are sort of uniformly in the same space, but we have to find ways to celebrate different styles and voices and perspectives and continue to make it, you know, these expressions grow.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Balance.
Yes.
Balance.
That's
Balance is
that's key.
something I've talked about for so long. Like everyone's voice, everyone needs to have a voice. You know,
Yes.
everyone's voice is important,
Yeah.
but not one singular voice predominant over all the other voices. And that I feel like
Exactly.
that's what's happening, and
Yeah.
that's just not good. It's not good,
No, for anything. I mean,
for
right? It's like,
anything.
you know, if I only listened to boot camp growing up, like I don't know what kind of music I'm like. I love boot camp, but I had to get out of just boot camp. And it was like,
Right.
you
Right. Yeah.
know, it
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
I feel like I would have been short-ended, you know, so
Right. Yeah.
just like my growth would have been stunted.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. Before we celebrate some hip hop albums and artists, is there anything you can share with us about what you're working on and what's coming up, you know, later this year
Sure,
and in years to come?
sure.
Yeah.
So I think it's I've been working on this for a minute now, but an album that's sort of a dual-sided album, and it was mostly driven by I really wanted to for a long time do something that was like clear to my heart, but make it like fully boom bap. And that was for me, like everybody knows this, why I'm like so excited to talk to you. Cause I remember when you guys did the Boom Bap Chat and I used to be up in the Twitch, in a Clubhouse all the time. And
Oh,
it was like,
word. Thank you.
yeah, I
Yeah.
used to be in there all the time. But that was the importance of being able to celebrate. I'm like, I feel like I make music that's distinctively boom bap. And I think people consider that to be like, that's old head music, right? That's like,
Mm,
that's the old people's music. And I don't really know what, oh, I bet you listen to the Common and, you listen to, it's like, I bet you have to listen to, Lupe Fiasco's probably your, I feel like there's sort of this air about it, and people that are boom bap artists or kind of find themselves in that genre can sometimes also be a little bit kind of give that image a little bit too,
yeah.
where it's like, look, I don't deal with the mumbles, I don't deal with the new stuff, I don't
Right.
like anything that's made past 95. It's like, say
Yep.
what, what I mean? And I think there's still dope boom bap albums being released. When we were talking with some of the options that I gave, like dope stuff being issued every day,
Yeah.
there's people that are still inspired in this music every day by
Yeah.
Jay Versace, and some of the new cats is just like really boom bap, soul sample heads, but they're doing it in a new innovative way. So
Yeah.
I think for me, I'm working on combining a DBZ album or Dragon Ball Universe album and a Sailor Moon album, but it's distinctly boom bap, and I wanted it
Mm.
to be hard drums, and I wanted it to be really distinctive boom bap rhythms. And so I'm working on that. While I was working on it, was so interesting. I talked to one of the producer of the Dragon Ball project. He and I had gotten paired through a friend that we knew. Shout out to Shesky, who introduced us. But he was like, "I'm not a boom bap producer, and I don't do boom bap." This is what he said. Oh, he's gonna get on me now, but he was that's his attitude was like, I don't do boom bap. And I heard some of the stuff you do, and it's real, it's boom bap stuff. And I'm like more of a folksy type, I'm like, okay. And he's like, I do this, do that. And I listened to his stuff. I said, I can, but I can see where we can work together. And a lot of his stuff is him playing banjo. So the
Oh,
Dragon Ball
wow.
project is distinctively like folk, but it's also boom bap because the way that he layered, like he knew what I did, and he took and made beats that borrowed elements of hip hop,
Mm.
borrowed elements of like boom bap stuff, but he plays banjo and everything.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
just like that was a stark contrast, I think, to like the really more harder stuff that's on the Sailor Moon project. But I was like, I'm going to combine those worlds and kind of have them cross over and be in
Yeah.
conversation with each other.
That's
So that's
dope.
what I'm working on. Yeah.
That's dope. Do you have a time frame
Yes,
on that?
I'm still working on, so I'm in full confession. I have a couple of songs that I did not was not ready for yet, but I'm like, I'm ready for those now. So I'm hoping to have everything done. I'm sorry, I'm taking my earrings off. I'm gonna have
You
everything
good?
done by like the summer so that I can release it in the fall.
Oh,
In
nice.
late fall, like October. I'm hoping to have everything done by out by that time. So yeah.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope. And I don't know what made me think of this, but something you said triggered it. In an interview, and I think this is really important. You talked about silence being like an inspiration for you and
Yes.
being very necessary. And I think in this day and age, I mean, I have nothing against people that release music constantly. I mean,
Yeah.
you do what works for you, but there is definitely something to be said for like slowing down, taking your time with art,
Yes.
perfecting it, listening to the inspiration where it comes, not forcing it,
Yes. That is for me, that clarity and focus. And it's sort of like creative renewal for me, because
Mm,
at the same time, it's really, I need time to recharge a little bit and really understand, so that I'm not just speaking to speak. I'm not just crafting a statement to say it, or like, this sounds dope, I'm really about to put them in a box with this. I don't want, I think, like when I was younger, I'd be like, I'm issuing toe tags on all of y'all, you get it, but now I just have gotten, I guess, in a different way where I'm like, I want to experiment with like where my voice might be at a certain time. I recorded some of these songs on the DBZ project. I was sick and I had like this raspy kind of deep tone depth to my voice. It was
Mm-hmm.
this texture, it's kind of gritty, and I loved the feeling of those songs with that. And then there's other songs that have a much higher voice texture on it and sort of some nuance and an emotional connection to the songs, a very visceral kind of delivery. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I think when you rush it, it's hard to do that, right? You don't really offer that opportunity for introspection. And sometimes some things are melancholy and require the DBZ project is really talking about the relationships across the universe.
Mm.
So it requires me to kind of have that emotional resonance of silence as a backdrop to really explore the yearning, the contemplation, some of the solitude that is in the relationships throughout without like thinking of like there's shown an anime and there's fighting and fighting, but in between that, right, there's all this really like nuance that it
Yeah.
imbues that anime with a lot of emotional visceral emotion, and so I want to showcase that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really, really dope and commendable. And it's coming this summer. That's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're tuning in, make sure you bookmark that. Prowess the Testament, new album coming this summer. So
Yes.
yes, yes. Will keep us informed so we can obviously get it, listen to it, and share it around. And
Yes,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So the what we do on the show, you might have seen before, we do a little segment called One Word, where we invite you to respond to an album using one word or less.
Mm.
And it's just a way to celebrate some dope hip hop albums. We're gonna have some fun with this tonight. We're gonna just start off kind of our traditional fashion, and I'll just show you an album and see if you can respond to it with one word or less. Sound good?
Yes.
All right. So the first one, this is No News is Good News by
Oh,
Fonte.
I'm gonna
Look at that.
say reflective.
Ooh, that's a good word for that, for him in general.
Yes.
Yeah. Fonte. Okay. Very good. Okay. Next one, we have People Hear What They See by Odyssey.
Oh, evocative.
Ooh, why evocative?
Because I think his he was in his what I hate to use this word, the word people use, he was in his bag, but he was really in his confident space. And for me, when you're in providing like that evocative sound, you are then sort of bringing to mind what you're making people resonant and aware that you are in a mindful place and they become mindful. And so to me, it was that's why I would say it was like it made you pay attention to everything that he was saying. There's some stuff layered in there that he mentions back home that like if you are not from here you might
Mm,
not know, but people from here are like, wow, he's talking about that situation, so I'm like, that's why I was like, it's evocative.
yeah,
I had to be mindful about that album.
that's dope. I love it. All right, here's one we've never brought up on the show. I'm so glad you like this album. This is Days with Dr. Yin Lo by
Oh
Ka.
yeah. Oh, um immersive.
Immersive. Oh, tell me more.
Yes. um I think when I think of immersive, I think about something that is multisensory.
Mm,
And I think that album, just Yin Lo overall, like that album, I feel like I don't know. I One of my favorite, like just the way that he places his words. Again, thinking about the way that he uses silence in his songs, like the way
yeah,
he it's so I will say people call it minimalist. I don't know what the typical word is for now, but like that minimalist sound that sort of builds up, but it adds like you're supposed to be in this world of paranoia, and like it's the Manchurian and all that stuff, candidate and all of that. He really brings you into that space. And at the same time, you aren't really sure what's happening. But even the way that it's called, like day zero, you got day 13, you got day
yeah,
912,
yeah, yeah,
that's just to me like immersive, that you got to get into the world. You got to be in there when you
yeah.
listen to that album.
That's a great breakdown. And Preservation does a great job. He sounds great over Preservation's
Yes.
production.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really good. All right, this is Word Life by OC.
Ooh, let's see, a word. I'm gonna go with atmospheric.
Hmm.
Maybe
Yeah,
I'll go atmospheric. Um,
I feel that.
yeah, I'm like Word life to me is like when you start the album, you are put in a certain place. It's the idea, right? It's like, first of all, it's like you are coming into the world of OC and you're getting an opportunity to, it's such an iconic release. And I think no matter where you come into it, whether you come into on the first song or you come into it in the last song, you really do understand, I think, who OC is as an artist. You understand DITC then. You understand like all of his collaborators. I feel like I know Omar after the, like, it's right, like it's ornate. And that's why I would say it's sort of like, I would use that word, atmospheric, because you're like, it's technical brilliance, but it's all these things, like the darts are being thrown, but the beats are just as, is silk underneath these darts. And so it's just like, it's very, I don't know. It's like very Brooklyn. It's all of
Mm,
that stuff. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's dope. All right, we mentioned his name earlier. This is Return of the Boom Bap,
Mm,
KRS-One.
boy, one word for that one. Transcendent. Transcendent.
Transcended. Yeah,
Yeah. I would
that's a good
say,
one.
I mean, that for me is like, it when we think about what is boom bap, KRS-One lives it, breathes it, activates it. There is a meditation around it. There is a towel around it in that album. I mean, and I feel like it needs to be a companion piece. You got to get criminal minded, and then this, and you put it together,
Mm.
and it's like that's your Bible and the Quran. Like you need to have both of these to understand the framework that you're even in. Why are you even in hip hop? What are you doing in hip hop? What is your purpose? What is the purpose of it? Right? Like to really have full understanding of all the story and the lineage of it, you got to go to that. That's like Vivaldi of like hip hop to me.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I love this album cover too. Just the records and he's
Yeah.
rapping into headphones. Like,
Yes.
oh man, yes.
The
Yeah.
tint on it is just like the whole thing is just
Yeah.
like, yeah.
It's return to the boom bap. Okay. We're gonna have some fun now. We're gonna go into we have two more rounds. That was the first round. We're gonna do two more rounds. We're gonna get a little not more difficult, but a
Yeah.
little more intense here, a little more intense. So we're gonna look at two more artists. And the first artist we're gonna look at, we're just gonna look at 5 albums, and then the final round, we're actually I think 15. We have 15 albums to ruffle through. So we'll get into that.
Ooh,
But
okay.
the next round is Rock Marciano, and we pulled 5 of his albums, and we'll just kind of go through it, kind of lightning speed. We can mosey on a few of them, but this one right here is Rosebud's Revenge by Rock
Oh my
Marciano.
gosh. I mean, so this is naming what I think of the album in terms of like one word, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cinematic. I
Ooh,
go with that.
cinematic. All
Yeah.
right. What do you think of Rosebud's Revenge
I
in
think,
comparison to Rosebud's Revenge 2?
oh, I don't know if I compare it. I mean, I think the arguable comparison, I hate using like Iron Man or anything Ghostface, but there's the idea of this like luxurious,
Mm,
again, sort of dense, gritty things that are talked about on the album, but it's fun.
mm,
And it's black exploitation. It's like it's fun. I don't know how to explain Rock Marcy's like the idea that the way he puts his projects together. But I feel like that album, to me, like when he's putting it together, he is building like the in betweens as much as he's building like the track itself.
mm,
And that album, just like the in betweens, are just as important as the actual album. And I feel like that album 2017 was a wild year because it was a lot
mm.
happening. There was a lot of releases that were out. And I remember Ka, we just talked about, but like there were
Yeah.
so many things that were out. And I would even argue that like we could put this in like an MF Doom comparison.
Mm,
There's playful, there's such inner monologue, um that I like the way that he stacks images that is like,
mm.
mahogany wood grain. It's uh, the idea that like what that looks like. That's a
Yeah.
very specific thing, and he is just colorful about it. So that's why I was like, it's got to be the names of the this. Like I remember something where he's like, I'm not a hipster. Then and then he's like, I'm listening to Michael Bolton in the jacuzzi or something like that. Like, you know, it's like, who is listening to like,
Yes.
but he's like in his, you know, brilliant way talking about like, yeah, what life is like. I'm at the point where I'm having fun and comfort, but at the same time, I'm talking about these sort of gritty concepts or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm not like on the corner hanging out, you know, pimp slumping. I'm out here on like my therapist couch talking about, you know, all the
Yeah.
things. And then I go put on my, you know, put on my other stuff and I go outside.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to think of it.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorites from him. This is Reloaded.
Oh, yes. One of my favorites too. I think, let me see a word. I'm gonna go with eclectic.
Mm.
Um, I think I could say a number of things about Reloaded. I like Reloaded in comparison, and we talked about um Rosebud's Revenge. But in comparison to that, right, I think this was like a second work, like Alchemist and the works that we had known at that point in time. I think it was like when really people were Rock Marcy started getting his production bag. And I feel
Yeah.
like everybody was just attributing stuff at that time because people didn't know. I
Right.
remember listening to stuff and people were still like, that's Alchemist. Or because they
Nope.
heard Q-Tip on one, they knew he was on the project. It was like, oh, that gotta be Q-Tip. And that's like, nope, that's
Nope.
Rock. That's gotta be, nope, that's Rock. Like it was
Yep.
really when he got into his bag to me to explore his own production.
Yeah.
And I think it was really experimental for him to do that, to really make it was kind of feels like an orchestral East Coast, you
Hmm.
know, kind of age album. And I feel like that's something
Yeah.
that's really for him to do that and to be able to write as vivid as he does and actually be able to do that against his production. Now, I got a chance to hear an interview that he did with some folks here on one of our channels, 89.3 on WPFW. And he talks about that being like the first time that he really stepped out to be like,
Mm.
I'm distinctly making my sound. Like on Reloaded was like, this is my sound. And he started to build it at that point in time. So what was considered experimental at that time with the, you know, relaxed drums and softened drums. And then it was like, you know, all the like stuff that we tend to love about Alchemist with all the like, especially the piano loops and a lot of the stuff that we
Yeah.
like, and him taking that and making it his own. Yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta love that album.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a dope album. All right.
Yeah.
Next one, a little different. This is Marcialago.
Yes.
Fun
Oh
cover.
boy. That's one of my favorite ones. If I have to say, I think I would go masterful. I would go
Ah,
masterful.
masterful.
Um, what do you think about that? Is that like I feel like it's this is going to get me in trouble, but I feel like West Side Gun at this point in time, people were getting tired. People were getting
Mm.
tired. They were starting to feel like, yeah, we've heard you, and we're kind of whatever. And I feel like Rock could have went into the same aspect. I went to
Mm.
go see a show right after he did this album, and oh my goodness, man, and that was it was just masterful. It was like when it was this connection that he had just made was brilliant. It was like these the whole audience is rapping along. Like I've been to a lot of shows, but to me it was like everyone was like in deeply dimensional with all of
Mm.
they were having such a good time. They were in it, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is crazy because I'm thinking like I'm a super deep fan, you know. I'm like, wait, y'all know the Primeval verse, y'all know the my,
They know it
you know,
all.
I'm just like, wait a second. And I feel like it could have been a distortion if he had not nailed this album. But
Mm.
man, was it nailed. And everything down to the artwork, to the subtle details, to like he brought us ground level, but it was just like to me, I laugh. I'm like, he's got a song called Puff Daddy. I mean, come on now, like it's
Yeah.
like this is, you know what I'm saying? Just like you got to give him so much credit for being like this. I don't know, it's just brilliant, but at the same time, I used to say Rock Mars, and I told him that I was like, you know what? I feel like when I listen to your stuff, I'm like in, high thread counts, lacquer finishes. I'm
Right.
in ornate, intricate kind of like, listen, I have, my granite is like being steamed. I'm I have like, two folks that are in my, penthouse steaming my clothes. And that they're zipping them in bags to take back and pulling me new pieces. Like I feel there's some meticulous level of like just overly wealthy.
Yeah.
That's how it makes me feel.
That's dope. That's dope. All right, last one. This is one of my favorites from recent years. This is Behold a Dark Horse.
Oh yeah. Oh wait.
Also great
You know what?
artwork.
I might have.
Uh-oh, what's
No,
she
he's
pulling
not
out?
here. I was gonna say, strangely, I used to have one right in my drawer right here, but I
Oh,
think I
dope.
took it out. But I'm like, yeah, that's probably my favorite album. Again, I would use the word atmospheric,
Yeah.
because again, it brings you into, it's intricate, it's introspective. There is some experimental stuff happening on there, but even calling it "Behold a Pale Horse," I
Yeah.
think I just feel like that. I had bought that album. I bought several of them, which is why I was laughing. I had the CDs all in because I bought so many of them to get signed. And I was like, I'm just going to get all of them signed.
Yeah.
When I was like, I got a chance to meet Rock Marciano, I'm gonna tell you, I froze. It was so
No.
silly of me. I froze and I felt bad. I started talking to him, but I was talking to his manager, Jazz. I'm sitting talking to Jazz, and I'm like, I got, this have dog tags that I use. It's like my merch. I put on my like a USB dog tag, and I
Oh.
put all my song, some not all my songs, but like 6 songs or something on it. And I was like, I gotta get this to Marcy, and he was right behind me. He said, "What? You have something for me?" And I said, "Oh, I gave it to Jazz." He said, "But what? Can I get one?" And I was
Ah.
like, "Gosh." Um, and I start like telling him how much on that album Amethyst. I was like, this. I have a song
Amethyst.
that's like in
Yes.
the universe in conversation with Amethyst, and I was like, just from the start to the end, I was like, it's short. It ain't a long song, but that hook of just being able to say, you know what, I've been high and low has gotten simple. One thing I always know, don't let myself go. That idea, like y'all stay sleep, you only dreaming. It's like the
Mm.
whole idea of that is like, I don't know. I just love that album. And so it's all of those things that I've said, but atmospheric, it pulls you right in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and I'm like, I do feel like sometimes you need like a fur coat, you know what I'm saying? But you also have to have like, 1,000 deaths. I remember, like I said, gentleman standing next to me was rapping 1,000 deaths. And I like stopped for a second because I was just like, we both in it, you know what I'm saying? We're like in the part where, it's like brothers busting at your bubble goose. And he's like opening up his shirt and he opened up his jacket like he's getting shot. I'm like, this is like he's acting this out, like,
Right.
like miming of the album while he's rapping. And I'm just like, this is the kind of stuff that Rock Marcy like inspires. I just like, this is why
Yeah. That's
to
dope.
be at his shows. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He's one of the best for sure.
One of the best production and marketing and lyrical prowess, all of those things together, but his unique ear to production, his unique style, bringing all of that together, such is as such textures on top of each other. But I
Yeah.
love, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So shout out to Rock Marciano. Switching
Yes.
gears, another MC that has an incredible catalog over the
Yeah.
last, 15 years or so is Sky Zoo. So I thought it
Okay.
would be fun to just run through Sky Zoo's catalog and celebrate his work and try to get your one word on each album. That sound good?
Yes.
All right, right on. So we'll start at the beginning. This is the 3 Day High,
Oh,
Cloud Nine with
so
the
I'm
Ninth
giving
Wonder.
one word, right?
One word, yep.
Uh, boy, for let's see, I'm gonna say uh Mm. Nostalgic. Nostalgic.
Nostalgic. That's a good one. That's a
Yeah.
good one. All right. Then he comes out with what I guess is his kind of debut. if you will, the salvation.
Yes, monumental.
Monumental.
Yeah,
Yes.
because
So
that
good.
yeah, so good. I mean, that's my number one. Album.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say
Okay.
that's my top. This is where I said people argue with me because they're like, "Oh, you put that album above." I'm like, "That's his magnum opus. You start
Okay.
there, Beautiful Decay, and you get to Necessary Evils, and you don't have you know everything about Sky Zoo and who he is at that
Yeah.
point."
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Okay. So let me know if I show you a top five, I'll put it off to the
Yeah,
side too.
yeah,
So we'll try to figure out your top five. All right.
yeah.
This is live from the tape deck with Ill Mind.
Oh yes, Illmind. Oh, I love
Yeah.
Illmind.
So dope.
Boy, that one that I just used. I'm gonna go with let's see. Hmm. Poignant.
Mm, it's a good
Yeah,
word.
yeah.
Yes. I like that. Okay. This is a dream deferred.
That's a top five.
Oh,
Um, yes, and I'm gonna just go with oh gosh. I'm gonna go with ooh, can I use my name and say prowess?
yeah.
That
You can use your name. Yeah.
that's it's
That's a good
cohesive.
one.
It's when he got into that jazzy soulful production. um like look, G Ali back in the news for bad reasons because people are naming him, but let's talk about Jan Sport Strings and that naming him, and Range Rover Rhythm. Those are like top songs on there for me. But Dexterity, I guess
Mm,
maybe I'm saying prowess, it could be Dexterity. Just he examines so many things, but like his personal things over with being that dexterous lyricism that we've come to love.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. This is Skyzoo and Ant-Man Wonder, an ode to
Oh
reasonable
yeah,
doubt. Mm,
boy, one word. I'll go to saying uh thoughtful. Thoughtful.
thoughtful. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Showing
I think
showing some love to Jay-Z and reasonable
yeah.
doubt.
I'm like, you
Thoughtful.
gotta yeah, I think that's thoughtful. I mean,
I
without
think so.
saying it's like in conversation with, but I'm like, I like Sky Zoo when he explored that without being right. It's like it's an ode. It is
Yeah.
not, it's inspired by, but it is not, don't think of it as being, for me, I thought like Elmatic, I think people put it in the same conversation. I don't put those two in the same conversation. I think it was like it's Jay-Z's 44th birthday at that point in time. And it's like them taking, live strings and horns. It is kind of like Elmatic in that way, but I think he puts the emotions, he puts himself in the emotions that
Mm-hmm.
Jay displayed, not exactly the same concept. It's like he was expressing hubris on this. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna portray, that's what I loved about this album. So I'm like, yeah, it's thoughtful.
Yeah. Dope. Dope. Okay. This is the joint he did with Torre, Barrel Brothers here.
Oh yeah, that's another. It's not in my top five, but I'm gonna just say it's a great album. I'm trying to think of a word that I'd use, and I would probably use resonant. Resonant.
President. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Torre. Oh, Torre's so
All
dope.
right. They're both such great MCs, and I feel like they they work so well together around like how they don't, it doesn't ever feel like they are trying to out rap each other. Like they're
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
underrated MCs, right? It's like it's easy to happen that like I'm trying to, make you work hard or whatever. Like, no, they were like, we're trying to have fun, we're trying to have
Yeah.
skits, we're trying to
Right. Right. Right.
yeah. It was like
Yeah.
for it was like for us, it was for the fans to be like, y'all wanted us to hook up for some time. And
Yeah.
it's on Duck Down. It's like,
Duck down.
it's that chemistry. Yeah. Gotta put
Yeah.
it together. Yeah.
Yeah. Dope. This is music for my friends.
Top five.
Yes.
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 That one, I'm gonna say, um, boy, I need a word to express how I feel about that one. We've said nostalgic. I'm gonna say honest. That album is
Mm,
honest.
honest.
Because
Okay.
right, it's like again, you want to know more about, like, we've already known, we've had some conversations with him in each album, I feel like at this point. And this is like when he started to get this critical acclaim that came,
Yeah.
and then it's like he's talking about friendships that have changed, his upbringing. We start to know a little bit more about like this split custody situation and him going to live with his dad at some point, and like see a key, the knowing, I mean, luxury. It's emotionally, um, he's processing being very authentic, but
Yeah.
it's so deeply personal. And you really, again, get to learn more about him. But at the same time, he's like rapping his ass. Like,
Yeah.
that's hard to do both.
Yeah. And one of my favorite songs of his, Money Makes Me Happy with Black Thoughts on
Oh,
there. Oh,
yes,
love that
yes.
song. Such a good song.
That's a good one.
All right. So then he teams up with Apollo Brown for The Easy Truth.
Yes. Ooh, the easy truth. I ambient.
Ambient. Okay.
Ambient. I
Yeah.
love that album. It is not in my top five because it's hard, right? It's like, gosh, if you put everything in there, but it is one of my favorite ones. I will say it stayed with me the longest. I played it the
Mm,
longest, because I really liked Sky Zoo on Apollo's production,
yeah.
but I really loved that it's like a mutual respect, and I really love the way that he paid tribute to so many albums on there. Like he paid tribute to a
Mm,
lot of like NY stuff.
yeah.
Um, and I feel like, he even pays tribute a little bit to like Apollo Brown's albums. So I
Mm,
feel like it takes me from, if you the collaboration of him with Ill Mind, and then you really look at that and you put this side by side with it, it's like you really get this beautiful collaboration of the two of them. But one of my favorite tracks on there is like on the Stretch and Bob show, which I feel
yeah.
like is like an underrated track on there. I'm
Yes.
like, man, that's New York, influential show. It's beautiful. I love the jazz of like Visionary Riches.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jordan's in a gold chain, right? It's
Yes.
like
Yeah.
coming of age in Brooklyn. Like I learned so much again about him. And I laughed on this album because One and the Same is one of his songs. But if you have listened to Sky Zoo from this point, One and the Same he says all the time. It's like I can tell it's a transitional word for Sky.
Mm,
So he will be like, it's one and the same. When I put like he would put that in there,
right.
and
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
like, I
Uh,
see he got a song called One and the Same, because probably when he was writing it, in my head, I'm going like, I could tell he probably freestyled that piece and was like,
mm,
I'm gonna keep that because that's what Pops always said. You know what I'm saying?
right.
My pops told me, it's like just that feeling of the album coming. But that's just to me like boom bap. Like it puts me in the era of like Preem and Guru. It puts me in the era of like Pete
Yeah.
Rock and Nas. Like
Yeah.
it's so vivid. I love that album for the
Yeah.
production and him just going with it.
I like that one too. All right. Next one is Peddler Themes.
Ooh, one word. Ooh, you know what? I never thought one word would be this hard. Um, let's see. Cohesive.
Oh,
Cohesive.
yeah, I
Yeah.
can feel that. I feel like
I
this
mean,
one doesn't get talked about enough.
I know. Why do you think that is? Is it because it's just the time of it?
Well, I think this, I mean, I think The Easy Truth was such a big, it's Apollo Brown. It's such a
Yeah.
good album. So it maybe got overshadowed a little bit. And this was more of a, there wasn't as many songs. I think it was
Yeah.
seven
Yeah.
or eight or so. So more like an EP. He didn't release it physically that I'm aware of.
No. No.
Maybe vinyl, a short run, maybe.
He might
But
have released it as a vinyl, and it might have been after, because he does that a lot. Where he'll like
yeah,
a few months after will do a limited run and then kind of be like, first dibs, you grab it. Because when
yeah.
I feel like when I was at the show, somebody was opening up a vinyl, and he was like, "Oh, you didn't even take it out of the plastic," and he was like, he's kind of, so I know he must have done a limited run. And that guy was like, "This is gonna be in a plastic till I see you, bro. You gonna sign this?" And
But I love this album. I think it's so
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Okay. Oh, here's another wonderful one. In celebration of us.
top five,
All right.
for sure. um, Introspective.
Intros, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
feel that. Yeah.
I told Skyzoo when I first saw him while he was performing, while he was on tour with Metropolitan, I told him, I said, listen, if you don't come out with it, I'm coming out with the crown holder, whole entire like clothing line. Bruh,
Oh, dope.
you gotta get the shirts for women that's a
Yes.
crown holder, because that song, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, that
Yeah.
song has been so much for me. And he told me, he said, that's a dope idea, but he didn't do it yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
You might have to
I don't
do
know.
it.
It's like, listen, first generation rich, crown hold, like it
Yeah.
comes together. But to me, some of the greatest samples on that album.
Yeah.
I love, to me, it's like that was this will people I have fought people who don't like the album as much, right?
Hmm.
Because it does lean heavily into producers that he's used before. So it leans into a lot of the Ill Minds and, Mark Infinite and that kind of
Yep.
stuff. One of my favorite songs on there is the uh Star of the Story, the stick up tape from Menace.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Beautiful. Listen, Star of the Story by Heatwave was one of my favorites. And I
Mm.
reached out to this producer when I heard it. Like, I literally hopped in his DMs like minutes into the song. I'm like, yo, who is this? Because
Yeah.
I
Who?
thought it was it. I just had knew it was Mark Infinite. And I'm like, he's from around here. He's from the DMV. So I'm like, oh, I'm hopping. Mark, I'm like, oh, that's Avenue Productions I never heard of.
Huh. Yeah.
I'm like, I pop into his stuff, like he hadn't even done a lot of stuff, but the way that he layered that Star of the Story, and then it's a song that nobody knows often. It's like it's this sample that he has in there by this artist named Christine Perfect. It's crazy how
Mm.
he's gotten that, and I'm just like, man, the vocal just is beautiful.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's why I would go with that. I'm like, that's why it's in my top five. I just feel like
Yeah.
that the production on that album is some of the greatest. And I let my dad hear that album because it's like there's McCall Urbaniak, the Parks and Recreation song with Sabo on it. My
Love that
dad used to
song.
play that song. My dad used to play that song all the time.
That's such a
Um,
good song.
yeah, and I had never known it. I was like, that's wild that someone like sampled that for that. But Illmind just put his foot in that. So I
He did.
love that for the production, and just like the album could be an instrumental and
Yeah.
it's great, and it also could be just like the acapellas and be
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's great all around.
yeah.
All right. We got Retropolitan with Pete Rock.
I'm just gonna say classic. That's also
Yeah.
my top five. And I
Yeah.
think I think it became six, but
Well, you're at
but
five now.
Metropolitan, because it's like
So,
it's the throwback sound. Again,
yep.
I saw him right after he released it. He was like, I'm
Yeah.
only doing songs from this. There was this cat in the crowd who was like following me because I had a Ghostface shirt on, right? I was like,
Dope.
I wear my Ghostface shirt oftentimes with people I'm like who also appreciate like my goats. And I
Yeah.
know Sky has a appreciation for that. And I was like, let me wear my ghost shirt. And he was like, yeah, so tell me your favorite ghost fan? Like he was following me around.
Oh
He started screaming during the performance and
my
started
gosh.
screaming songs from music from my friends. He was like, I'm not performing music for my friends. I'm not performing Dream Deferred. I'm only doing Metropolitan. And it was so funny because by the end of that night, like that guy he had his love for him because it was Elza was there and they did Eastern Conference All Stars.
Oh, dope.
The last song
I
on the
love that
album.
song.
Yeah, their last performance of the song that they performed together, but Elza performed right before Sky. It was just so funny. I was like, this guy, but that when I think of it, I'm like the smooth flow. It's just like that to me is the modern boom bap like
Yeah.
magnum opus. And I think we were
Yes.
talking about how a lot of the albums that even I picked are albums that are so old. You know what I mean? It's like, man, I feel bad picking an album. Feel bad picking the Shyness sometimes, or like,
Yeah.
Nocturnal or something. It's like, of course, those are boom bap classics. But I'm like, you can be like, yeah, I got some 2019 stuff on here. You know what I'm saying? I got some
Yes.
Ka on here. But that Retropolitan for me is just like, it was amazing. I still play that, and I like when
Same.
I'm having a day, yeah, I just throw it on. I'm like, I gotta have, it's all good. I'm like that It's classic. Pete,
So
you put
good.
that's the Pete Rock snare right there. If you
Yep.
want me to illustrate what it is, it's an all good.
Yeah. That and Eastern Conference All Stars. Those two
Yes,
beats.
those
Oh,
two joints are
so
just
I mean the whole thing's good, but
the
those
whole
two.
thing is amazing. And just I mean, I also feel like Sky Zoo felt like um there was a part I think I literally this is a true story. We were getting ready, they were getting ready to perform that song. And so they were or perform the album. And Pete Rock wasn't there, so his DJ is like spinning all Pete Rock stuff, right?
Mm.
And they're playing Cool's World, this is playing that. And Sky Zoo asked people in the front to rap. Nobody was rapping, but
Mm.
except me. Then he says, "Oh, gonna hand you the mic." He hands me
Oh,
the mic. I'm standing right in front. He lets me do the verse, and then everybody starts screaming. He said, "Hold up, hold up! Nah, y'all didn't want to rap. Let her rap." Like, y'all know, no, y'all didn't want to rap. I thought y'all ain't know it. So he starts
yeah.
playing again. He's like, and he was like, this is what hip hop, he's like, you just gave me like that feeling that you probably are feeling from me. You just gave me like, I got goosebumps.
Wow.
This is hip hop. This is the moment that something like this happens. He's like, you probably touched somebody in the back. Don't even know they wanted to get up here and get this mic, but they were too scared or they were
Yeah.
too, and he was like, so you gotta feel good about what you just did. But it was like the first verse, and it was great. He was like, "Stop, hold on, don't go." It's like, hold on, I'm going to keep going. But it was such a beautiful night, and I was like, at the time, I was so in my space that obviously, I just got to open up for him this fall, and
Nice.
it was as beautiful as you can get. Right? It's just like
Yeah.
seeing him perform. The other guys are also from DC.
Oh, word. That's
Um,
right. Yes.
yeah. So they were there and he did the album live with a band.
The
So it was the only
Mind of a
it was
Saint.
Mind of a Saint.
Okay.
In a couple of deluxe songs that were not yet released, he did that all on, with a band here and a
Oh,
trumpet player that did like all the soloing. But the way
yeah.
that he had it orchestrated, and so that the trumpet was out front, and he was like, "This is my," you would think differently. It was kind of like his accompaniment. It was kind of his like his vocalist, his background
Mm.
vocalist was like the trumpet. So
Yeah.
he's putting color on all of the words, and it's just like, man, seeing Mind of a Saint there, I was like, it's not. I would argue that it will eventually replace something in that top five because seeing it
Yeah. I
live like
feel
that,
yeah.
it just was like beautiful. Seeing the other guys up on stage, they were even
Mhm.
like, because they hadn't seen it that way, right? It was like,
Right.
but getting a chance to talk to them and seeing when they were like, what was y'all thinking when y'all was making, I was just
Yeah.
like trying to get and me to open, and I was just like, I had said the crowd was like, it was one of the best opening sets I'd ever done because the
Mm.
crowd was like, they were waiting for this. They knew it was going to be a special treat. They knew he was there with
Yeah.
the rock band. And so I was a little worried because I was like, oh my gosh, the guy comes to me, says the person that was supposed to go on before, y'all was supposed to go on right before Sky Zoo, but the person that was supposed to come right before me was late. He was driving down from Long Island
Mm.
and he couldn't make the performance in time. And so he was like, so you're going to have to like take his slot.
Oh
And I'm
wow.
like, but it worked out incredibly great because
Dope.
he walked in, like I got a chance to vibe with his band. I'm like sitting backstage. They
Nice.
were like, we didn't know what you was going to get up there and do. And they were like taking video of me. It was so great. I got a chance to vibe with them. Incredible musicians, but the other guys just like they are masterful at what they do.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's an amazing experience. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. One word for the bluest note with Dumbo Station.
Oh boy, I'm gonna say um let's see. Soulful. Soulful.
Soulful. That's a
Yeah.
good word for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Another EP. One word for milestone.
Oh,
Milestones.
again, I feel like something around being personal, like introspective again.
Yeah. No,
Because
that's a
right,
good
it's
one.
like it's I love the fact of talking about what we don't talk a lot about, Black fatherhood, and
Yeah.
what the just the some of the concepts that are explored in that album, and using it against like um the movie and finding ways to like put the movie sample. It just, I don't know. I
Hmm.
love the way that he layered that.
Yeah, I love this album. Even
Yeah.
though it's super short, I still love it.
Yeah.
All right, all the brilliant things.
Yes. So I was going to say, which is why it makes it hard, right? I was like, that is close to my, but this is where I get people where they're like, that's not in your top song, but you put the celebration of us in front. Yes, I put the celebration of us in front of that, but I'm going to say that that is also like legendary. That album's legendary.
Yeah.
Because it is when I feel like Sky got on and he was like, hold on a second. I've gone viral off of flowers.
Yeah, yeah. That was dope.
Yeah, he's like, hold on, people putting this in bodega flowers is like the song that y'all made go viral. Like I just never forget how funny that was when he was like, I just never thought he never thought it was gonna go viral on TikTok. And he was and it went mega viral. It's like
Yeah.
280,000 people putting it in there. I want flowers, but I don't really want
Yeah,
it's
right,
like
right, right. Yeah.
but he was like, that's an interesting song. And I like, BJ the Chicago Kid singing on it. It just like this it's a great album. It's but I think we get a lot of the exploration of again of like what it's like being in Sky Zoo's world growing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I got from it. Like if you are in, it's not only all the brilliant things at for him, it's the St. James Liquors, it's the tour of the neighborhood, it's like plugs and
Yeah.
connections. It's all about Bed-Stuy and Brooklyn, and you're in his. You're like I feel like I'm sitting on a stoop, and he's giving me, this is what it was like. This is the
Yeah.
free jewelry. This is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love this album.
Yes.
Okay. Last one, and you talked about it a little bit, is The Mind of a Saint with the other guys.
Yes.
The original
I'm just
version. The deluxe version is in the mail, so it'll be here soon.
yes. I'm going to say that album is evolutionary.
Mm,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
evolved as you're listening to it because again, sitting listening to it live, there was a point when everybody's like a couple of songs into it. Um, it was a point when people were like emotional, and it was. I looked around to see if it was just me, and it wasn't just me. It was
Mm,
everybody in the room was
yeah.
like into like we start out with eminent domain because he does it in order. He did it in order. By the
Dope.
time you get to apologies in order, it really bodies. People are like,
Mm,
and my everybody, there's not a dry eye in the house for apologies in order. And you're just
wow.
people are just listening and they're watching and they're that's why I was like,
Wow.
this is it evolves and unfolds as you watch it. And
Yeah.
I was the straight drop. I used to will play this song, will dropping my son off at school, and my son loves. And so I was like, every time I hear that, but him doing that even live, I was like, my son somewhere is so jealous because he asked me, Mom, when I got home, did he do Blue and Orange? Did he do it? And I was like, no, he only did songs from Mind of a Saint. And he was like, oh man, I know you were really wanting to hear Blue. My son said, you listen to that song every day. And I said, dude, I hate the Knicks. I don't know why I listen, but it's so good. It makes me like the Knicks. That's
It's a good song. It's a good
yeah.
song. Yeah.
Yeah, but I
It's
that
awesome.
album is just it evolves as you're listening to it. Every time I listen to it, it's something different. And now, do you have listened to the deluxe version yet?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love
Then it
it.
like you're still experiencing. I'm listening to stuff that he's saying on the deluxe album. And I'm like, oh wait, I gotta go back to listen to, Views from the Valley because I didn't realize that he was saying, okay, yeah, all right. And Franklin, and just kind of now that the show is over and you kind of see his arc and the grief and the suffering that comes with
Hmm.
that, and you're like, and I got a chance to see Damson Idris. I think he was
Oh
talking.
wow.
He's like, this album, it has had such a good compliment to like
Mm,
that darker turn that you got to listen to the deluxe. And then he was
yeah.
like, but you got to listen to the original first, then listen to the deluxe because you got to get that, arc. You got to be able to see, damn, this is when he's on the top, when Franklin's on the top. And yeah,
Yeah, it's such a fun project because there's so many layers to it.
yes,
And it's not just layers inside of the album, it's layers in a whole another world in this TV show,
Yes.
and it's like you can watch the show, then listen to the album, watch the show, and it just kind of feeds off
Yes.
of each other. It's really amazing.
It's a and he during the show he said something about like he really did his homework. Like he went back to look at shoes that were released during that time. He
Hmm.
went back to like talk about like that's why he was like I bumped into this particular person, right? Like Tupac and John Singleton were on the street. Like it was this would have been during the era that they were filming Boys in the Hood or whatever. So
Right.
he like put he just just
Yep.
to hear that that's like he really did his deep thinking, did deep research to put that together, the whole Hermes connection and the like. It
Uh-huh.
just, yeah, I loved the
Yeah.
way that he did that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Same.
Yeah.
So hats off to Sky Zoo. We did it.
Yes.
Every Sky Zoo
My
album.
favorite MC, if y'all don't know, I clearly have talked up. And Rock Marcy, if you can't tell, is my second.
Yes.
It's like, I don't know how you do that. So I'm like,
Hey, when I asked you for your favorite albums and you had several Sky Zoo albums on there, I was like, I wonder if you know the whole catalog.
yeah,
So I was like, yeah,
yeah,
we have to celebrate Sky Zoo. I mean,
yes,
his catalog is so, he just releases top five albums, like all of them.
yes, all of them.
I
And
would
we
not
have
be,
to celebrate new age, right? It's like,
yeah,
even though him and like Apollo, Torre is like, over 45, but
yeah,
he's just 40, Sky Zoo. And it's like, it's interesting because I'm getting ready to get in that space. And I feel like
hmm,
you've seen a lot. And I think there's this underrated kind of connection about like, again, this old head perception, like
yeah,
terminology is like 40s. I'm like, these guys have been a part, they've been here to see so much of hip hop. They've all had their opportunity to like have the boom. I think I've got introduced to Term and Sky Zoo in the same DJ Premier mixtape, in fact.
mm,
Um,
dope,
and I'm like, that's the barbecue sunflower seeds and Fruit Loops. That I forget the name of that song. The Sky Zoo joint, but yeah, that was like those songs. I feel like we've watched them grow up.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And like, and now
yeah,
they're grown men. They're married. They have children. Their lives and what their commentary is like they've got a chance to do that and be able to do it sort of in a very more underground indie kind of space, which
yeah,
means they were kind of freed from having to like deliver this album that maybe
hmm,
they didn't want to.
right.
They didn't have as sorry, Nas, I can't wait 30 minutes. Listen, 20,
Oh,
20
heck yeah. New Nas song with DJ
yes,
Premier.
I
Yeah, I can't
cannot
wait
wait.
either.
We gotta see what's gonna go down, but don't let yourself down. J. Cole has let you down. Please don't let yourself you don't give a cream and play with us like this. So I
I
just know
know.
it's gonna be dope, right? It's like
Gotta be dope.
because
Has to
everybody
be.
coming for you. You mean to tell me they just gonna go on Hit Boy? It's your fault. You have done it. So,
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I can't wait. I can't
yeah.
wait for to hear that. And apparently maybe an album. People are
That's what.
speculating.
So yeah, I think that's why I was like, it's coming back to save, right? Because Nas has already said that he's no longer performing Illmatic. It's like
Mm,
that's done. Don't ask for it. I'm not doing it anymore,
yeah.
right? I saw him with National Symphony Orchestra when he came here
Hmm.
last, and I was like, it felt good, but I was so excited as soon as Taken in Blood, like he
Mm,
yeah, and that's the next song that he did. Like when the National Symphony Orchestra got off the stage, DJ and a drummer, and Taking in Blood comes on, and I'm like, look, let's go. I'm ready. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
It's just
yeah,
the whole.
yeah.
I'm ready to get with the. Let's usher it in, and
Yeah.
yeah, I can't wait to see him and Preem really back in their space again, their cohesion again, and I feel like we so need that. Is like
Yeah.
new Prime album this year, and that would
Oh,
be so great.
I did not know a new Prime album was coming. Actually, no, I think I saw either Royce or Premier talking about it, but I didn't
Yeah,
realize it was coming this year. That's dope.
yeah, that's gonna be great. Yeah,
Heck
I
yeah.
can't wait. It's
Well,
like,
and a new album from you. So that's a big deal.
you know what?
Yeah.
I hope people will one day, right? Like it is one of those kinds of things where like someday I feel like that is important that, folks will look at that and be like, that's underappreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. Well, listen, thanks for coming on and sharing, some of yourself and celebrating some albums and rock and Sky Zoo.
Yes.
Before we get up out of here, the very last thing we always do is shout outs because it's a hip hop show, so we give shout outs. So I'll give a few and then I'll turn it over to you for the final shout outs of the night. Sound good?
Yes.
All right. Cool. Definitely shout out Joe November, who's been wanting to have you on the show for a long time. So shout out to Joe for making this connection. Appreciate you, Joe. Shout out to Bo Brown. Shout out to Profound, to Iomas Marad, the Big Stowe, my man Profound. I think I said him twice. But shout out to the whole crew. Appreciate y'all. And shout out to Reef the Lost Cause, a
Ooh,
dope MC.
yeah.
Released a super dope album this year. He's gonna be coming up on the show here very soon next month. I forget the exact date. So come on back and check it out. Shout out to all the hip hop coming out of Washington, DC, and that whole area. Some
Yes.
super dope music coming out of that area and has been for a long time. So shout out to Kev Brown and YU and all the dope MCs coming
Yeah, I
out
didn't
of
even
there,
get a chance to
producers.
say why you. Yes, please.
Man,
Thank you.
I'm such a big
One of the
YU fan.
probably the greatest MC. I'll put that stamp. Y'all like Kendrick, people like Kendrick. I'm like, that's because y'all don't know why you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You like
I can't.
Andre 3000, you don't know why you. You
Yeah,
have to, yeah.
yeah, he's that good, yes, for
Yes.
sure. So shout out to YU, shout out, like I said, all the dope hip hop coming out, and shout out to you. Thank you for doing your thing and being so excellent at what you do
Oh,
and taking
yes.
some
Thank you.
time to be here. Yeah, and taking your time to be here and share a little bit of your story and yeah, just really appreciate you for that. So with that,
Yeah.
I'll turn it over to you for the final shout outs of the night.
Yes, I'm gonna double down on the artists that you have named from DC. I mean, YU, amazing. He's got great stuff that he's been previewing with one of my childhood friends, Double O Schizo. I can't wait
So
to hear what they do together because just both of them are like they don't think they're different, and I
mhm,
and I say that with all full respect. They just are on a whole different wavelength than what even you can begin to get on. But anyway, that a lot of the, like you said, DC hip hop artists, because we don't get the same recognition as everybody, I feel like. So come to the city and get hip to like all the folks that we have to offer. Let the dirt say amen. And like I said, Humble Monarchs, we got
mhm.
so many people, Camber and I seen they back in the studio with Ken Star, so I'm like waiting to see what that's going to be. I think shout outs to Joe November, as you said. Shout out to you, the Boom Bap Chat. Just the idea, the journal that you guys do, just cataloging all of the great albums that have come out within sort of this space and over the years. That's so important work. Shout out to Words, Beats, and Life that we talked about,
Mm,
and the important work that they're doing for people in the future to be able to have these conversations, and to practice art, in a safe space. Um, and then shout out to, I mean, no diss to other universities. I'm an alum of Georgetown University, James Madison University, and Trinity Washington University. So I'm going to give all of them shout outs because you know what? They are continuing in Howard University, HU, that's here in DC, for keeping hip hop in on the docket in the curriculum and embedding it to have these exploratory conversations around where we are as an academic discipline and looking at that. So yeah, and to my parents and my family and all my friends, and shout out to Bill Beats and Shubzilla who were on the show, and I got a chance to see their show, and yeah, it was inspired. They made me cry that night, and I
mm,
probably needed to hear all of those things. I was in a very weird
mm.
place, when you just need that. I
Yeah.
needed to hear that at that point in time. And Mark Cooper, because we all four have an album, the Grime Proof
Ooh,
album coming out. So,
dope.
yeah.
Great. Awesome. Well, on that note, as we always do, we say peace, peace, peace.